All right, hello and welcome everyone to this product domain session as a part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit Lillestrøm 2023. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeffrey Olet and I will be your moderator. This session is titled Hear from the Product Domain Steering Committee on the Progress Being Made on Activity Proposals for Information Lifecycle Management and Governance of Data. The speakers will be Michel, Bohren, and Radboud, Baayen, both of the Product Domain Steering Committee. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes, including the time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible, anywhere from about 24 to 48 hours. Before I hand it over to the speakers, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For online attendees, your microphones will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For those of you that are here in the room, you should be used to this by now. Please keep your background noise to a minimum. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and I'll get the microphone to you. Second slide here. I would also like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent and standards are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding, and accessible to all. So please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. You can actually find this anytime on the buildingsmart.org website. Go ahead, Michel.
So, thank you very much for the introduction. Gets better and better with technology all the time. So when we started first time with the hybrid events, it was a nightmare. Now it's just that we have to take some time to fix the systems, but it works. So warm welcome from my side to the people here in the room, local audience, but also outside in the internet. Whoever is there, we have no clue, but eventually then if we have questions afterwards, we will hear about it. So very happy to have a quite large audience because we know we are in competition with the large sessions in the big auditorium, also concerning products and product data. So product domain has a tough day today to attract people. So you will hear a splitted session. So I will do the first part, around about half of the session, concerning an activity proposal about information lifecycle management. And then afterwards, I will hand over to Radboud, who will present the activity proposal concerning governance of data. That is quite important because all these activity proposals, the activities we are setting up now in the product domain are linked together. So there is no single approach. Activity proposals are the first step within the buildingSMART international processes to get into a project. So also these two proposals we present today should end up hopefully in a project. So therefore we need also support because project needs people, expertise, money, and that is something that can't be driven alone out of a product domain steering committee. Yeah, that is Radboud who will talk afterwards. That's perfect. Then I switch to the roadmap of the product domain. So we are quite proud of the roadmap because we had a kind of a relaunch of the product domain, or in these days it was still the product room. And that was in early 2020, and then we had COVID. So the relaunch had to be virtual in some conferences, video conferences and so on. So we really started then probably mid-end 2022, really working on the roadmap and on the development of the product domain. So the two activities are well positioned in the roadmap of the product domain. So that is important. So with the pink color behind governance of data and information lifecycle management, you see other topics that are in pink color that are also in one or the other way topic in this summit. And you see that it's really something that goes forward and has everything a relation to each other. It's all about data and information. It's all about data and information management. And what is important, really data during a process. So not static data, it's about dynamic data. So what I will present now quickly in the next few minutes is really something about the history. So kind of a brief overview what you get in the next few minutes. So some background. So why did we have the idea to talk about information lifecycle management? Then what is the opportunity, the need we see in the market that we do something in this direction with buildingSMART? Then the relation to the buildingSMART international roadmap so that it fits in there. And then something about objectives and of the following projects then, because that is the target we have, the major challenges we face in this project. It's not that easy. I will tell you something about this. And then what we plan to deliver really in details, what will be the result and how we plan to execute. So what we see is that in the buildingSMART community, not only the buildingSMART community, it's general in the industry, if you talk about digitalization, but now also the new topics concerning regulation, it is a lot about design and build. And we think that is a too narrow approach to talk only about design and build. So people like to talk about digital twins and some semantic data around the geometry, but it's still just a kind of a static documentation of something that is built. We have the impression that is not good enough. It's not wrong. It's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In contrary, there is also value there, but it's not good enough. It's not the approach we think that we should really have. So we think we should start to focus more on processes and on use cases where data and information is used, and then also be able to take decisions where to focus and also with activities, even in standardization, because eventually it's not design and build where we have the potential for efficiency and productivity, eventually somewhere else. But we do not know yet, so that's the reason for this activity proposal here. So if we want to uncover untapped opportunities concerning efficiency and productivity, then it's important to look at the overall processes, and it's important to involve all the stakeholders, the whole ecosystem. So we talk about much more than only design and build, planners and contractors. So I think that is the important part about these activity proposals. So it's about manufacturing, engineering, it's about logistics, it's about procurement, and a lot of other topics around the construction site. So the opportunity in the industry needs we see. So that's something we hear, especially this year in Lillestrøm quite often. It's about circularity, it's about sustainability. And there we are quite sure we need to involve manufacturers. We need to involve also engineering companies, because it's not that easy. It's not only that you specify and then you evaluate and you procure a product. Quite often you have upfront a phase of engineering, so that you design an overall system or even a plant. And that needs involvement and also of engineers. Then for the open BIM value at the end of the day, you need also to engage with operation of a built object, and also then later on with reconstruction, specifically if you talk then again about circularity, you need to talk about reconstruction quite early. So then we need answers to upcoming regulations that we heard a lot also today, especially also in the morning. So if we don't find optimization within a process at all from the beginning to the end, then it will be almost impossible to cope with all the regulations that are coming up. And that it's, again, not only to procure the right product and material, it's really to design a building or an object in an appropriate way that can cope with all the regulation at the end. So that means that we have to partner with all these stakeholders around a built object to really fulfill regulations like we heard EPT, CPR, DPP, LCA, and a lot of other abbreviations. So we see there a need that really do a kind of a boost also in the industry to show up where is the real potential at the end of the day. So that's how it fits into the Building Smart International strategy. So we think that's also important. So it's not just a nice idea of the product domain. So it fits very well in. So the alignment of all these activities we have on the roadmap supports the strategy, and it will help to enhance even the Building Smart International standards and interfaces. And it will probably also help to focus with resources really on the processes and the use cases where it makes sense, where is really value, and not something else. So we also align with this horizontal lineup within Building Smart International, because these both activities are not activities from the product domain. We see clearly that it's probably something that goes through all domains at the end of the day. So the objectives are quite easy because it's very common if you talk about business process engineering or the business process re-engineering. So if you want to understand these processes, so that's not rocket science. So we will increase the understanding of the processes and the use cases that are relevant. Then we will hopefully name the responsibilities, so who is really responsible where, and especially if we talk about data and information exchange. We will talk about documentation, so that we get the documentation of these processes, and a lot, of course, is also communication around this topic. And hopefully we will then also uncover some inefficiencies and also simplify some parts so that you can make proposals then even where the process could be a little bit streamlined, where it could be more efficient, where we could find more productivity at the end of the day. And finally, we also comply with standards and norms that are around. So especially we talk about ISO 9000 and ISO 9001, where we talk about processes. So again, here, nothing new to implement or to reinvent. So approach, also not rocket science, also quite easy. Well, if I say easy, it's only the method. It's probably not the task itself. But yes, we will start to gather all the activities we see around, but then really involving all the stakeholders around the built object, record it, write it down, finalize it, and share it really with a process map to the community. And then hopefully we start to analyze and search for future improvements in the processes, and specifically the use cases where we see that this potential for more efficiency. So happily, other parties will then take it all on and go forward with it and work on the process and finalize it and tune it and so on, so that it's not something static. So it's not the idea just to document the process as it is. It is more that we have to really a dynamic work on it. So what is a challenge? Big challenge is, of course, that Building Smart International is not seen as an authority in business process engineering. It's also not seen as an authority in information management, specifically if you go out of this narrow focus I mentioned at the beginning. So if you talk about procurement, about logistics and so on, we are probably not the subject matter experts. We think that's probably the biggest challenge we will have. That is the reason that we will try to leverage with the global network of Building Smart International, so bring really then the expertise into this project, and get then also the credibility because we work together with all these stakeholders and build it up. What is important here, if you look at the Building Smart community, then of course this project will address an enhanced community. So these are not the people that you're usually visiting a summit. So if I talk about logistics company, about engineers, so in engineering companies, if I talk about maintenance owners, funders, these are not the people that are usually here. Also manufacturers, perhaps this year a little bit more, but usually we do not address them until today. That we want to change. Then it is a large project. It is a complex project. So I think when I said 2 times, it's easy or not rocket science. That's only the method how to do it. But on the other hand, building a process map around an enhanced understanding of a building construction industry, that is of course not easy. There we will need to involve, on one hand, subject matter experts in project modeling, in process modeling, process design, but also of course then the stakeholder representatives that really have the knowledge and can support us doing it the right way, especially if you're then looking for improvements in processes and use cases. So yes, it is a challenge, but on the other hand, if it would have been easy, then everybody could do it. So that's the reason I said, well, then it's us. So that's what we want to deliver at the end. Well, that's nice with the colors, of course. Yeah, we could also achieve perhaps so this huge map with all the nice colors. But at the end of the day, we want to have really the digital harmonized process map, but in a common and open source tool where you can work also in future on it, because that's really the idea or the goal we have, that it's not a static documentation of the process. It's something that third parties can take and develop further on and improve hopefully further on. So that should be really open for practical use, and one result of the project will be then also how to publish this, so who is allowed to work on it, especially on how do we treat inversion. So that's a topic Radboud will then address later on, is then a lot about governance of data. But an important one, of course. So that needs some people, of course. That's what I mentioned also at the beginning. And that is something we wanted to start today at this summit. So to address the community, and really we also said in preparation is a kind of a sales pitch for the activity proposal and for the project afterwards, because we need this subject matter experts on one hand of process modeling, process design, process documentation. On the other hand, we need all these experts out of these different industries and stakeholders, so from manufacturing, engineering, maintaining, logistics, and so on, to get them really also the expertise into this project. And we need, and there we also quite sure, GS1, because we think that is probably at least from the process, but also from partially, at least from the technology side, an organization that is already quite well established in this area. So they have probably one or the other idea how this should work, because at least they are able to track and trace already today products through the whole process. Perhaps a short story out of my practical experience when I started years ago in this environment to work. I visited a manufacturer in the building construction industry, and I don't know, one or the other knows it, perhaps it's Feller in Switzerland. They make this kind of switches. And they told me, really in the first meeting, they told me, listen, don't reinvent something new in the building construction industry, because we are also in the consumer industry and it works. We can track and trace, and we have all information about all products. So please do it the same way. That was then my first meeting afterwards with GS1. Makes sense. Good. Something about timing. People that know me are not surprised that it's challenging. Really try to go forward. So what we want to do more or less until Valencia, that we publish the activity proposal, and people that are interested can work with us on the activity proposal, make it better, hopefully, so that we can then go into the buildingSMART process to make from an activity proposal an approved project. That is an important step. But then, of course, we have then probably in second half of 2024, we need in time to really bring the people in, especially get the funding for it. So we need a kind of a startup funding early, of course, because you have to pay a project manager, you have to pay probably also subject matter expert for process modeling and so on. So these people you have to get in to get a first result and a first impact, to have, let's say a sellable story to stakeholders and say, yes, we are willing to send people in a project like this, and probably also we are willing to fund it for a specific degree. So that is important, so that we really could start then by end 2024 or beginning of 2025 with this process modeling. Then quite tough to really try to make it in 1 year. So in my private business, I would say that has to be faster. But of course, I know here, if you work globally, if you work with people that are volunteers and so on, it just takes more time. Fair enough.
So, Michel, if I can interject. So, Jeffrey Olet, many of you may have seen me around before. So one of the roles that I fulfill in buildingSMART today is the activity proposal or proposals author and editor. So I help the domains with these types of activity proposals. I want everyone to be aware. So at the activity proposal stage, these are estimates, and I think it's really tough, sometimes, but we're not asking you to be absolutely certain how much money it's going to take or how much time. What the community wants to know, what the standards committee, the voting standards committee wants to know is, if you have a general idea, you can well scope the problem, which I think they have done in a very excellent way, is then say, okay, this is what we think it's going to take to do a solution, right? And I know it can be a struggle for everyone, but it gives them at least a point to say, look, they have a grasp on what it will take to get done, what kind of effort is going to take. Because they can also offer assistance in saying, hey, we think we know people who would be interested in joining these activities, as well as their own outreach activities themselves. So it's, as Michel talks about these things, it's the best guess today, but as we move into the detailed project plans, that's where you hope, where you're doing this project funding setup and everything, you really begin to nail down what that's going to look like. So, and things can change over time too. We've seen projects that had really, really broad scopes at the beginning, and then as they started to get into that, planning process kind of narrowed down, and just the opposite too. So,
yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, totally agree. I'm running an own business. If I'm not here in Lillestrøm for buildingSMART, and it's the same in my own business. If a project manager comes with an idea, first question is, well, how much time, how many people, how much money? So you have to get an idea what you're talking about. But yes, rough estimates, especially also this one. But also important to get an idea, to think about how many people, how often do you have work sessions, what do you have to do, what do you have to deliver, gives you at least some idea about the costs. And the next part is then, of course, and it's also an important part, well, how do you fund this? And that was interesting then for us in the group, that we thought about, well, okay, it's round about an estimation of 500,000. On the other hand, we talk about around about 10 different stakeholders, and we think that we should have from each stakeholder at least 2 representatives in the project. And if you think about this profile of stakeholders we would like to have in the project, you say, well, it would be perhaps around about 25,000 euros per stakeholder to get this project done. That is reasonable. And that is good enough.
And what we also emphasize too is that this cost doesn't mean this is all hard cash that has to be raised to execute the project. Some of these numbers might be in-kind contributions from the companies, from their participants that say, a CRB or OBB or other companies say, I've got this person that I can give part-time to your project, and don't worry about it, we'll take the pay, but here's the portion of that is required to account for, because every project where we want to do a buildingSMART is determine the value of these things, because then we build upon that within the buildingSMART community. We're able to explain to people, this is what it takes to develop standards, And then outside the community, we're able to explain to people, what does it take to develop standards? So we can bring more sponsors in, we can bring more members in, and have them understand what the value of those standards developments are.
Perfect. Thank you. And what we need, that's clear, we need support. So that's not something that the steering committee of the product domain will manage at the end of the day. So that means if you want to contribute or to help to support, we are not talking about money now. Important. It's more about ideas and supporting the idea. So then you know where you can find me, you know where you can find John Proctor or then also Radboud afterwards. And if you don't know, then you know somebody that knows. And that is important so that we can go a step forward and really start to work on these projects. Because activity proposal is nice, but and I think there's also an important part, if we do not find support for a project, then it's probably not a project. But at the end, we would like to do it and really to finalize it. So it's right on time because I planned to talk half an hour and leave 10-15 minutes for Q&As and then hand over to Radboud. So if there are questions, please.
Thank you for your explanation. Looking at what you just said, I was wondering what particular, maybe you can elaborate a bit on that, what's the role of buildingSMART on this particular issue? I mean, you mentioned Lifecycle. I mean, that's from owners, from others. Talk about legislation, additional legislation. It is, what exactly is the reason why buildingSMART should do this? And why is it not someone else doing this? Sorry, I'm Gerard from NAGO, RHGV.
Thank you. One part why not somebody else, it could be somebody else, of course. We are not aware that somebody would be working on it. Why buildingSMART? It's probably less the process map itself. So it was more the discussion we had quite often. And if I listen to the different sessions also this morning or even yesterday, that we always have the question where should we then really focus with standardization? And if you start to talk about digital product passports or data templates or what properties you need and so on. Well, if you do not know where you have the potential, then it's also difficult to talk about, well, you need it especially in this area. And one aspect I know is that probably one huge potential we have is in logistics. Nobody talks about logistics, but it's probably one of the biggest potential we have because we lose a lot of material, we produce a lot of waste of good material is on the wrong construction site, the wrong material is on the right construction site, and so on and so forth. And in theory, we would be able to provide the right information. But then you talk about specification. That's not a topic today. You talk then about evaluation of product is a topic. You talk about procurement, no topic. You talk about logistics, no topic. But if I want to optimize this process, if I see in this project that this is really a process with a lot of potential, then it makes sense to do a standardization and talk specifically about entities and properties and so on that fulfills exactly this use case or this process. So that is the idea behind.
So remember too that within buildingSMART we recognize that we have certain standards that buildingSMART is responsible for and maintains, right, and progresses. But then there's also opportunities for many of these projects to be thought leadership, whether they're industry paper, white paper kind of things. They could be process standards that we also, as a part of the activity proposal and the detailed project plan, as a part of that participants section, there's liaisons with other groups, whether they're other standardization groups or industry expert forums or whatever that may be. And the whole idea is that if we have people that have the initiative and capability to gather all of that expertise together in our forum, it doesn't mean we have to necessarily own every standard, but we facilitate the discussion and the ability to move that at least forward so that where we can determine which standards are appropriate on the BSI side, so property sets and looking at IDS and all these, how it's based on a model workflows and where in those workflows. But maybe it's a way to advance the conversation in other industry groups and other standards organizations to address these issues and then move them forward. So that's an important thing to sort of remember is it's not like buildingSMART's trying to own every conversation or own everything, but it's finding what is the thing that fits us best and then how does it fit with other organizations.
It's also important for me because I mentioned the challenges, so it's credibility. So is buildingSMART the organization for a process map? No. Does buildingSMART has the experience, the expertise to do it? No. But on the other hand, I'm also, in my other life, I'm CEO of the Standardization Authority in Switzerland. And in a lot of these topics, I always say, no, I'm not the expert. No, I don't have the expertise. No, I'm not the right one. But I'm the right one to bring people together and to work on standards with people. And I think that's a little bit the same here with buildingSMART. There we have expertise. There we have the credibility. But we have to bring in the right people. That will be the challenge. It was that good or that bad? Do we have one online question or no? Please, yes. No. Okay, if there is no other question, but you have a hell of a lot of time for your presentation. Great. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now it's my turn. Second half. Let's switch to the next one. So I have pretty much the same agenda as Michel, which is based on the table of contents of the activity proposal, which is, of course, based on the standard set by buildingSMART on how to put an activity proposal together. So we follow the guidelines, but maybe not all of you have been here before. It's just like getting into season 3, we do a small recap of season 1 and 2 when you're opening up Netflix. So we started out with, like Michel said, right before COVID, and we drafted this picture on what is our position within buildingSMART, because we're talking about domain rooms, building room, construction room, airport room, but we're also talking about rooms, and now it's domains, of course, search and replace. We're talking about domains that are cross domains. So technical domain has influence on all the other domains, or the same goes for regulatory, and same goes for product. So product is not manufacturer. Product is, as the standard says, Espen taught me, construction object. It's about construction object information going through, and that's with all the domains the issue. So going from that starting point, we had a meeting with the steering committee and trying to get together what should our roadmap look like. We drafted that in right before the Montreal summit, and during the Montreal summit it got ugly because we got people in the room and then you have to write it down, or you got post-its. But finally we got to this fantastic roadmap. As Michel said, we worked on this, we got good subjects on here to work on. It's clear, it's got a goal. So the activity proposal that I will be talking about is governance of data. It's fantastic that we use the abbreviations so you know where it's going to lead. But governance of data, that might be a little abstract subject. So I put this picture down. I don't know, does anybody know ICIS in the room? Well, couple. Okay. ICIS is a worldwide organization of specification institutes, national specification institutes in the world. It's covering all over the world. It started in 1994, so next year we're going to have a party. And in Rome, we actually signed a memorandum of understanding with buildingSMART to work together more closely. what these organizations do is governing data, governing a structure, a specification system, which is mainly used to be able to sign contracts between an owner and a contractor to get your project done. We govern that. There's a structure behind it. And from there, business has been developed. So I think CRB is already in business for 60 years. STABU specification system is where I came from, is about 40 years in business, which is a de facto standard in the industry all around the world, different organizations, same idea. So another example is ETIM, which is a product article classification system. This is the interface that you can go into to find your stuff, but it also shows you that for this particular class, they're on version 11. You can compare it to the previous versions. There's a very strict way of doing RFCs to get in changes, and there's guidelines if you really want to put something in there, work with this. There's a standard set of guidelines that you have to work with. This says version 1.0 because this is it might be a little confusing. That is ETIM standard classes, product classes. This is ETIM modeling classes. So this is a new development. That's why there's 1.0. There should be 11.0, I guess, for the other things, because ETIM also is already in the market for about 25 years. So they're doing their business. And as I said, we do the STABU system. They have the same setup. STABU werkwijzer, new Dutch word for everybody. So then we want to use data. We're talking about exchanging data in an open way in the buildingSMART community. So as a user, where am I going to go? Well, we now say the go-to place is buildingSMART Data Dictionary. Right? This is the connecting part, one entrance for the whole world to get into. And we find something called IFC, which is connected to unit class, which is connected to ETIM, which is also inside the BSDD. Great. One environment hosts all. But that might not be the case. But what could be added was we put a Dutch translation in there. It's currently a project that's underway by buildingSMART Netherlands to put a translation next to the original IFC, and that has to be maintained, of course, from a Dutch point of view. And I could get in there and get a return of a Dutch translation of IFC. That would be the service that buildingSMART is offering to get through buildingSMART Data Dictionary. So it's a storage mechanism, it's a mapping mechanism, it's a publication mechanism. But in the Netherlands, we also work with different systems, like we have the SFB classification. It's a very modern classification built in 1947. See how innovative construction industry is. But in Sweden, this originated in Sweden. They're already in generation 3. We still use this, and we map this with, for instance, the STABU system. I can go directly in there. But what we also did is publish this as linked data. So there's a separate linked data platform which will help you create it, connect it. So we have an IDS configurator in the Netherlands which is connected to the linked data SFB publication. But then I don't have a connection to IFC. Or I could store it here, but why would I store IFC here? And the other way around, why would I store SFB in the BSDD? I want to connect those two. And that's where the governance of data comes in. This connection, who made this connection? Can we trust this connection? What's it based on? That's what governance of data is about. So supporting the vision and mission of buildingSMART, I put them down here, but basically it comes down to quality of data, trust in data that supports the sustainability, sustainable use in processes of infrastructure and building assets. Just like information lifecycle management, you have to be able to know where your data is coming from based on what criteria this data has been created, maintained, etc., etc. And the same goes for the mission to facilitate that. You want to facilitate transparency in the decision process. And also that is the idea of this activity proposal. And that will create better value in open BIM. Like Howard Bell presented yesterday, everything open this should be open to. So I got a picture here. We are working on a digital system for the built environment in the Netherlands, which is about a transaction transparency. So this means I have to exchange information between one party and the other, and then you have an authentication that you want to use. We have OAuths, we have all kinds of mechanisms. We use it in banks, we use it in medicinal organizations to be able to determine, is the one asking this question of me authorized to get the information that he needs? And the same applies basically on when it comes to data and the data you're using. It's a responsibility to have clarity on what I'm looking at. Am I not even about authorization? This is within projects, but within returning it, knowing who's responsible for maintaining the data. The transparency in the process of how things are done, which I showed with the item solution, is that you can actually backtrack what happened. I can go back to an earlier version and see, okay, what did I miss? Or my project 10 years ago, I open it now. You know, with a Revit file, that's not going to work. With an IFC file, that's going to work because it's managed. But with the external data, is that going to work? That's also where I need that governance, so I'm sure that will work. And that means that you would have some mechanism to do that check using the services of buildingSMART. So Clive presented this one yesterday. I don't take pictures anymore. I just put the live stream on and take a snapshot. It's better quality. But he said you can put your logo on there when you are certified by buildingSMART International. That means that you have done your homework. Then buildingSMART said, we trust this, we say we can trust this party to do it right. So that will help enhance the value of buildingSMART standards and services. So what I would say is buildingSMART is the go-to place for standards and services in open BIM. We want to maintain that because that's our authority as a buildingSMART community, that we say we are the ones that can actually say the open BIM standards world is managed here, and that will be open. And the level of quality that you want to have that demands governance of data. And it doesn't mean that buildingSMART has to execute this, but make it transparent. That's one thing that I have to be clear on, because some people think now buildingSMART has to be able to govern every data service that's being disclosed through buildingSMART. That's not the case. Find a mechanism to show the people using, the end user, what they're looking at. And be independent, but support responsibility. And I got this example from Amazon. You can shop through Amazon and get Amazon products, right? So you know where they're coming from. But you can also shop for third-party products. But because it's Amazon and I trust the way they handle me, if a product is broken, I can send it back according to Amazon rules, because otherwise I might not have bought this product by the third-party seller. But because Amazon does it, I trust this platform, therefore I go into there. And they don't, it's clear for me, and that's what I need. So, challenges we have. Of course we have challenges. Governance of data is also a business thing. Like I said, there's these ICIS members, they have business. Governance is our business. At our office, we say 50% of our time goes to maintenance of the standards. That's just doing the governance, expert committees, maintenance committees, etc., etc. New developments is the rest, but we have to maintain what we have created. The same goes for bridges. You can build bridges, but then you have to maintain them. I think Germany has a task there somewhere. The other thing is engagement. This needs to be on the agenda. This is an important subject. We think it's an important subject as a product room. We try to convey that here, that it's an important subject because the quality of content is important. So the engagement of the industry through all the stages is important. And then, of course, implementation. So that's the next step. Well, Arthur is in the room, so he can pick it up and just do it. but you need to have a mechanism to be able to show it to the end user how we see that. Now there is a single dot which says this is verified. Let's go a step deeper and make sure that everybody who verifies something can show what it is. Well, the deliverables we're going to get. We start out with an internal report, building insight. What's it called? Building Smart Insight? Industry Insight.
Industry insights.
Industry Insight. That was the name. Sorry. And that will be a description of what this governance of data scope will be. So I name it Way to Connect an Open Universe, because there's so much data out there from even companies we don't know about, and we want to connect, so make it connectable. And this wire model that can be implemented, and then we will go to the next stage, which is governance of data version 2. That's the next one on the roadmap. So I started in 2023 with finalizing this activity report or activity proposal. And then, of course, after that, and it all depends on engagement, we can start working on the requirements, and there's some desk research to be done, but I really need input from the industry, what your views are. We talked to the ICIS people, of course. We got the input from ICIS people because they do this on day-to-day basis. But as end users, as implementers, how do you want this? What are the things that your customers are asking for? What are your questions that you have as an end user? What kind of questions do you have as an owner when it comes to reusing data, etc.? Needs to be put in there. When it comes to cost, copy paste his thing, because I didn't put it in there, divide it by 4. So what I need, support of brains and dialogue, people together, few meetings online, get this information and get the outlines. And of course, when we're going to write and create things, we need a support of hands. This is where experience comes in. I think that's my, what we call activity proposal pitch, I think. Questions, please. Gellert again.
Sorry. I was fascinated by your example of Amazon. I'm not quite sure if I understand correctly, but I thought Amazon is, if you order something through the Amazon platform, they more or less take over the role of getting the complaints and work it through the real provider. Is that something in your mind as well? I mean, it is not only that if someone's on the buildingSMART data dictionary providing data, then the buildingSMART takes over responsibility, but what is the guarantee?
Well, take the example is not one-on-one, of course. Taking over responsibility is, I think, a difficult thing, because buildingSMART cannot be responsible for the governance of the SFB. But they can make sure that our way of governance of the SFB is transparent. So buildingSMART says we need to have this in place so our users can be sure how this is governed, and if they are able to objectively determine if they can trust the data that's in there. So it's a threshold, you might say, because, well, take the example that we make a mapping between SFB and IFC. And we are managers of SFB, Kate Standard, we say this is a good mapping that we do. So people might say, we trust that because we know they're the authority on this subject, they have their governance in place, etc. And then Mr. Muller comes along and says, I got a connection between SFB and IFC. You can use mine. Or company X could do that. None of them is the owner of SFB or IFC for that matter, but they're able to do this. That's the free, open mapping mechanism that companies can use. As an end user, I want to say, I want to use the context or the filter on this organizational connections between IFC and SFB, because I trust this organization. I mean, everybody in the Netherlands is free to create a specification system. Still, they come to us because we are a trusted party. You know, we give them 4 publications a year, matched with legislation, matched with the standards, updated, etc., etc. If somebody else does it and it's 2 people in an attic somewhere, they don't know if it's going to be a correct contract. And well, you probably all know closing contracts in construction industry is a big deal. So you need to be able to have reliable data. Responsibility, what I said about responsibility, I mean, you have to feel responsible to be able to give your end users the right information. So responsibility on transparency, not responsibility on taking over from the other party.
Like to add only an example, also out of my business in Switzerland. So governance is not black and white. Take governance away if you maintain governance. So for example, in Switzerland, we allow third parties to then connect to our standards. We have, for example, manufacturers that provide product data connected to our standards. We have an organization that provides sustainability information to our standards. And our governance goes that far, so that if there is any issue we care about, we solve it with a third party provider. That means that also not everybody is allowed to become a third party provider. So that could go very far, it doesn't have to. That's probably also part of the paper we have to evaluate. So what is needed that there is trust in the market. My experience is building construction is the you need a lot, because there's no trust in it.
And I think from the buildingSMART perspective, we've already touched on this before when it comes to software certification and implementations and such. You know, the vendors go through what we say is the process to become certified, right? So that means it is technically capable of that software to pass the test to produce a valid IFC file. That does not mean that a user can't create an invalid IFC file. They can take the certified tools, make erroneous decisions, and produce a bad file. So if they come to us and they say, well, I have a bad file, it's Autodesk's fault or Bentley's fault or whoever's fault. Well, we can turn around and say, okay, now with the validation service, we have an ability to say, look, it follows the schema. You may have made a mistake. And oh, the software is certified. They followed all the rules. Where do we think that is happening, right? If it fails in the validation service, okay, we can begin to debug that. We also provide an outlet for feedback through the forums. But generally, for us, it's like, okay, if something is wrong, then I can alert the contact people at the different vendors to say, hey, this person is having a problem. Do you want to address this? Or I can say, it may be better that you address this in that particular vendor's support forums, because it's not really, we're not debugging Revit, we're not debugging ArchiCAD, we're just saying, this is obviously an end user problem to deal with. But we're at least providing the transparency and the mechanism to say, okay, we heard you, but let's help you take care of this in the appropriate forum or manner or support system. And I mean, the BSDD, in terms of support and things like that.
I have nothing to add, but yeah, right.
Yeah.
Perhaps just to contribute a question, I'm Michel from Singapore. Well, I'm really fascinated by the commitment and the passion of the BSI community in this digitalization and the data journey. I just have a tactical question on governance, data governance best practice. That's related to responsibility in terms of I mean, during the data life cycle, certain data could be passed from one party to another party. Is there a mechanism or a best practice of how does that handover and takeover process?
There's a couple of things that we do in the Netherlands. I should be at the microphone, right? There's a couple of things that we do in the Netherlands, which we through the ISO 9650, and they create templates to do that, which is basically an IDS solution. So you can build in some sort of governance there. I just sent it to my colleague because what we also have is a standard called DICO, which is digital communication. And it has standard forms for certain activities. So that might be ordering, might be invoicing, but also might be a repair request. So you have a standardized form in XML to do that. And you could make a couple of standard IDS forms for specific purposes to make sure, but then you get to the same issue as Jeff was saying, to do it right one time. And of course, you can mess that up. It's just like having a good car and driving badly. You can have that with validated or audited, I should say, is the term for building smart IDS structures. But you can build in those mechanisms, but some name has to be on there, and there has to be some sort of transparency in the process that's normally used and how to do it well. It's not like brick down or something. No.
And I think with the validation service and IDS, it was demonstrated earlier today, we can see the path moving forward is with the validation service, you can say, I have a valid file that in so as it meets the schema requirements, it's structured properly. With an IDS file on top of that, I can say, okay, the values that I'm looking for are also correct, right? So those are the services we can provide, but then it also requires that you create a
Exactly.
good IDS file. So we have an auditing tool to make sure that we have good IDS files. But again, that's process, right? We're saying BSI is providing services and processes to allow that, but the data itself is still up to the end user or whoever owns the standard or the data itself.
Well, I'm actually referring to beyond that, when
kind of for a certain data that's perhaps used and owned by a party in the design and build phase, during the data life cycle, it could be passed on in the operation phase to another owner, right? I mean, is there a mechanism or best practice in the industry to facilitate that process?
I've heard examples using blockchain for that kind of solutions, but that's very experimental. So that's, no, I don't have any best practices for you to share. I'm sorry.
Part of the Canadian chapter, I'm very new to this BSI community, so pardon my ignorance here. But can you explain how this process works and like what is the outcome? So is it going to be similar to the validation service, for example? Like once this project is done, how do the different chapters get to participate? How do they get to benefit from the outcome?
Okay, no, what I try to emphasize is that everybody who manages data governs their data somehow. So CoBuilder is working on product data templates. They make sure that product data templates match the criteria they have set, and these criteria should be transparent. If we can make that criteria transparent, the user will be assured that this is correct data. That's what this activity proposal is saying is, no, buildingSMART is not going to do a validation on, is this data correct? But it will give you insight in how this data is governed, and you can assess for yourself if that's okay enough for your project. Because for project X, it might be good enough to have well, maybe you can even see a star rating in there, but to have a small governance structure on there, and for other things there might be like ETIM is really it's bricked down everywhere. If you put in a request for change with the ETIM system, it has to go through steps, through a revision period. It's even worse than ISO on some points. And then a request for change will be published first in a dynamic version, and every 2 years there will be a full release of the ETIM system. And it's very strict. That's why it's a trusted source of this standard. So if your data is structured according to ETIM, and you have the connection between ETIM and IFC, and ETIM says this is a good connection, you can trust that connection. That's the mechanism that we're proposing here.
So once this is developed, then different vendors could adopt this standard or this guidance that we can provide?
Well, if you have vendors could say we implement standards with an assurance that this is correct, but it's mainly for end users to say, okay, I want to write a contract. And if you're in Canada, you want to have a CSC accreditation on there because that's the leading role player in Canada when it comes to project specifications. So I use their base system and I use software that uses that system and not software that uses another specification system because that's my base quality I want to have. And there's some work to be done in the project to work this out in detail.
A very naive question. This is the first time attending this topic presentation, so I might be completely misunderstanding.
Yeah, I know it was a short previously on.
So this happens at, so this certainty, this governance is defined in terms of processes, but it actually applied at the project level. So for each project, somebody will comply to the guidelines expressed in the governance so that a client can be assured that their project will live a long and good life. Is that, am I getting you right?
You come from Denmark, right?
No, but
oh, sorry. Okay. No, I thought you asked a question earlier in the other room, but because I wanted to get into what country are you from?
Italy.
Italy. Oh, I don't know any systems in Italy. Too bad. No, it's as Arthur explained to me in Rome. The data dictionary service provides for people to put in data dictionaries, to create data dictionaries within the buildingSMART data dictionary environment. This will mean there will be a lot of data in there. How do you assess which data is fit for you? Because, for instance, the SFB system is fairly simple. It's 4 levels deep, and it has classes in there for functional building elements. But there are contractors who created an extension on the SFB systems going 14 levels deep. Nobody in the industry is willing to use that except this one company. If they put it on the BSD and nobody knows this is a proprietary hobby project of a small contractor that thinks this is fantastic, everybody should know about this, and you start using this, and then you find out afterwards, but this isn't governed right, this isn't correct. You cannot see, you cannot verify for yourself that this information has been governed by an authority on the subject. Then you might be in the wrong. If you can assess that beforehand and say, yeah, but I'm not going to use information that's being created by this proprietary small contractor, might be good, but then I have to do my research. But I have this connection made by an authority on the subject, I can use that blindly. That's what we want to make transparent.
Yeah, and so it's at individual project level that I can decide to trust a small provider because in
Sure.
that scope it could be good enough. Or for a long-term project, I could say, no, I definitely need in public procurement context, I need a long-term assurance that, okay, so your infrastructure, we put the check mark next to the level of governance that these people.
At least make it objective for you to be able to determine if it's okay for you to use.
Thank you.
I would like to add something because for me, these are also two levels of governance. So what we want to provide now is another maturity level for building smart in governance. And I think what you are discussing about is then more, and that is of course an advantage if you have a specific individual project and there is something responsible for data governance, then the more you can rely on a standardization organization, the easier it is. So for example, in Switzerland, it is like this, so a larger project, usually it says, well, use the standards of CRB. Then it's done. Then you know it's reliable. And that is something we would like also to leverage the maturity level of building smart so that eventually you can say, well, follow the building smart governance, and then you have a good data governance in your project. So that would be the goal. But I think it's an approach step by step. So, for example, you mentioned several times the I would say this checking of exchange files that buildingSMART provides. So as we do in Switzerland, we go now on the next level. So we want to stop to certify software systems. We want to certify data exchange files. And then you have, of course, then a hashtag over your file. That's where it comes from, where it has to go, and what is the content. And then, of course, you know with this file from whom, for whom, and what the content is. And then, of course, you have a higher level of governance of this data. So you can't change in between, for example. I think these are different levels. And, of course, you have to evaluate what fits well.
Just use a short clarification. Would we understand God as probably the data governance policy of the PSDD? Or it's more than that?
It's the level behind. So yes, building smart should have governance on their own processes. And they do that with the certification and the validation tools, etc. So they do that with IFC. There is governance on IFC. You have to do the works and have agreements, etc., before a change can be implemented. But the data dictionary is also a service to provide third-party content. How the third-party content is governed, what the quality is, what the reliability is, as Michel said, I cannot see. And this activity proposal is about creating transparency on that level. What happens there? I don't have any opinions about that as building smart on how they do their work. I'm just saying you have to show how you do your work.
It's behind or it's part of? Because this is
Well, you have to do something on the building smart side to be able to say, okay, you can publish it here, how you do it, or have a link to your documents. You have to have your documentation in place so it's open and visible for the building smart community to see it.
So, for example, imagine that this activity proposal is not proposed. And then, I don't know, maybe I can expand that and someone addresses buildingSMART and ask us as buildingSMART, okay, how you are governing your data that I see there as a user, you know, and this is not still a proposal, which is our answer. I mean, that's why I see part of the buildingSMART data dictionary service, and not something like separate. I don't know. Maybe it's better, right? We need it. So
I had
please govern.
Go ahead, Arthur.
Sorry, maybe it's too complex. Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks. Those are great questions. I really regret I couldn't be here from the beginning and hear the the presentation, but right now in BCD we have a few attributes that are there, and we recommend filling them, such as quality procedure. Yeah, you can provide link to like how do you ensure the quality, what steps you took. So we have this, but we don't ask everyone to fill it because we see a lot of use cases that people just want to have agreement that they have on a very small scale, like they agree between Norwegian municipalities how they want to call public buildings, and that's fine. We also want to support that, but we don't need to know what the quality assurance of these definitions are. Yeah, in Greenland they have 150 terms for snow, which is fine, but I don't need to know that. So yeah, all of this in BSTT is optional. I'm looking forward to the proposal how you would like to facilitate verifying this, because I think it's useful to know which content can be considered like trustworthy more than others, but it's really difficult because we are dealing with semantics, so it's somebody will always argue.
That never stops in buildingSMART.
What you don't want is you want people arguing with SFB or CCI or CSC. If it shows up and says, oh, this was verified by buildingSMART to come from them, they have their own governance policies, that's great. We have a standardized way of showing that through the BSDD. But if someone were to publish and it's CCI-esque, but it doesn't have the check mark, it's not been verified, then immediately they can see that and go, oh, I shouldn't be using this. Or I could, but it's not, I know it's not official.
It's like you can order a vacuum cleaner with Dyson or through AliExpress. Take your pick.
Any other questions?
We're done early.
Yeah.
Any online questions? No.
Wait.
Oh, wait.
It says transparent data is valuable, but it also must be accurate and reliable. Data that contains errors or inconsistencies can erode trust, even if the data is transparently presented.
Yes, but that's about the quality of the organization behind. So if I have a fantastic governance structure in place, but I don't do my homework, then it's still rubbish. I mean, if my system, I said I do 4 publications a year of our specification system. If I stop with that, after 2 years, it's just rubbish. So it's outdated. So I agree. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, what you can do, we're going to publish this activity proposal through the channels, some last weeks. So any comments are welcome. You know exactly how this works and how it will be communicated. And then contribute to future projects in any way you can, appointing me to somebody who might help with that, put some money in the bag, whatever.
So typically what we do is the finished activity proposal goes through, well, it is the room steering committee putting this together. So they approve it, then it goes through the SCE, the more technical ones also go through the SCTE, the standards committee technical executive and the standards committee executive. And then essentially they're an advisory board and they're like, yeah, this looks good. And then the standards committee looks at it and they vote it up or down as, you know, this is a valuable activity. We think it should move forward. And then from that point, we usually issue a call for participation or a call for sponsors or both, depending on how the project is set up. And then that's publicly spread everywhere. And those are usually the time that we publish those activity proposals for everybody to look at. There's usually a date and a webinar set up that says, okay, if you're interested in participating or interested in sponsoring, you know, we'll give you this information. We'll, you know, distill it in the PowerPoint form like they have an open discussion, And that's where then you begin building that support and looking forward to developing the true project plan.
Yeah, so our governance of data has to go through governance of documents first.
Governance and process, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Radboud. Thank you, Michel. And that concludes, we get about 12 minutes back for the end of the day.